Divert your eyes. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk in this video a little more about my past lives, my past jobs. I'm going to just go ahead and warn you though, if you get easily anxious or overwhelmed by the idea of changing jobs every year or 6 months or 2 years, divert your eyes. I think I figured out why people wear their sunglasses inside, if they're like me at least. It's so they don't forget them. I'll forget them if I don't put them on my face or like on my head or hang them here or something. So anyway, but thank you guys so much for coming back, taking a look. As you've seen, every 2 days or so, I've been pretty solid here. I'm really excited about it. The real question is, can I keep it up? And I just don't know for how long. But we're gonna keep trying. I'm a big believer in quality over quantity, and hopefully there is some quality here for someone out there. I think this one especially will be helpful for any of you that have thought about, you know, becoming a small business owner, an entrepreneur at some point. All of our paths are different, and honestly, you know, even as recent as say 5 years ago, I thought I'm just gonna be a corporate drone. And look, it's fine. I'm not 100% clear in this channel. There will never, ever be any judgment as to what you do with your life and as what decisions you make. But I do think it's valuable to share my experience, my takeaways maybe, as far as my different jobs, what I learned. There's just a lot to cover. And like I said, if you get squeamish, just look away, because a lot of you are gonna go, how does he even have a job right now? I'm sure. But it all led me to today and ultimately who I am as a real estate professional. Anyway, hopefully there's something of some value though. Keep your head up. If anything, hopefully that's what you've learned by the end of this. I will be doing this as safely as possible though. Driving hands-free, so I'm gonna put you guys into the little iPhone holder here, and we do have to show some homes today. We got a couple little errands to run, business related stuff. I gotta go drop a key off and whatnot. But anyway, in between all of that, we're gonna talk about my jobs. I had to go back and actually take a picture of my oldest resume that I could find to actually like bring you guys all the way up to speed. This reaches back to 1997, 1998, somewhere in there. Well, over 20 years. So here we go. Buckle up. Okay, so before we get started, here's one thing you guys need to kind of understand or know about me and my background. So growing up, we were, and sorry if the camera's shaking, but this is the only way I'm going to be able to keep up because I spend so much time in the car. And hopefully the audio turns out okay. Better than one of the Porsche videos. Anyway, so kind of middle-class family growing up. Dad worked for a lot of small businesses growing up, and more specifically in the automotive industry. And mom stayed at home until, I can't even remember, I may have been 16, 15, somewhere in there. She went to work for Kennesaw State University and worked in their continuing education department. That was like her first real job back after raising us. So anyway, I'm the oldest of four, but growing up, I was always around entrepreneurs. Both of my grandfathers, as you heard about in the entrepreneur video, and why I chose to get into entrepreneurship, and you know, sometimes it feels like I didn't really choose it, it chose me type thing, just because of my environment growing up. So anyway, around a lot of entrepreneurs growing up, a lot of small business owners. As I said, my grandfathers were both entrepreneurs, so it's kind of like bred into me at a very young age. And so I saw kind of what was possible there, and I was like, that's attractive to me. I like not having a boss, and I have a real problem with authority, as most entrepreneurs do. So anyway, when I was 16, I was able to go get my first job. I worked at Publix. I was bagging groceries, and that's like what a lot of us did. I mean, Chick-fil-A wasn't as big as they are now today in 2020, certainly, but they just weren't around like they are now, and they certainly didn't have as many locations. So anyway, I worked at Publix bagging groceries, probably a year, maybe not even 6 months. And I mean, as you guys know, you know, I loved cars, I loved being around cars, and so I started thinking, could I go work for a car dealership? Like, can I sell cars? Can I wash cars? Like, what can I do? So I went to Marietta Ford at the time, I think Team Ford now or something like that. There's been a lot of changes over there. But anyway, I went and interviewed for a position over there as a porter, is like what they're commonly referred to. But basically, when someone purchases a new car, it's got to be cleaned. It's got to have a little sticker taken off the window and stuff. And so anyway, I was around, you know, Mustangs, and they were a Saleen dealer. If you're familiar with Saleen Mustangs, they were really, really popular, like in the late 90s, early 2000s. And they're basically like a tuner of those cars. Basically, they take them and then they hop up the horsepower and suspension and wheels and tires and body kits and all that type of stuff. So anyway, that was like the dream job though when I was, you know, 16, 17, 18 years old. And so I went to work at a dealership, and then left that one, went to go work for another one, and made pretty good money, honestly, up until like I got into college and was, you know, washing cars day in and day out. And I mean a lot of cars, like 40, 50, 60, 70 cars a day, just quick hand washes, you know, turning them out. And so a lot of those were new deliveries, but a lot more of them were just stock, just cars sitting on the lot. So once I left that world though, you know, tried to get a little more serious about like a career, but in college had a professor basically like talk me out of school. And it was an economics professor, Mr. Goodwin, Professor Goodwin, that in an economics class one day, he's like, you have opportunity costs in life. And opportunity costs basically is easily broken down, means you have choices in life, right? So you can go to school, you can get a good education, you can hopefully get a good paying job that will pay off your student loans and so on and so forth, like a lot of my friends and college buddies were dealing with at the time. Or you can just go out and work and not worry about school at all. So as far as opportunity costs go, you know, again, go to work, make money, figure out what you like, what you don't like, or go to school, get a good paying job, maybe have some student debt to kind of go along with it, and you know, get out. Hopefully you get a better paying job. I mean, now more than ever, I think that entrepreneurship is a lot more accessible to most people. And so, you know, at the time, honestly, I was washing cars and we were paid on commission. We were paid on how many cars we washed. It was not a flat hourly rate. And that was my first taste of entrepreneurship, because quality had to remain high, but quantity also, as you get more efficient, and that's why I love capitalism, the better you get, the more you get paid. And so I'm sitting in that class hearing this professor talk about opportunity costs, and I'm like, I'm making really good money washing cars. It's not that hard. So I literally, that was the last class that I took until a couple years later, and I went back and finished 2 degrees, one in small business management and marketing, another in entrepreneurship with a minor in professional sales. And so, and then, you know, studying and going back and understanding by the book what entrepreneurship means, and certainly how to market and manage a small business or an entrepreneurial endeavor was really, really important. And I'm really going to try hard not to like understate this, but when I went back to school, I was ready to learn, right? There's an old saying about when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. 100%, because when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, the student didn't ever show up hardly. And again, fortunately I didn't go into a ton of student debt or anything, but anyway, that's that. Again, I was making anywhere from like $50,000 to $75,000 a year washing cars. I left there and actually went to work for Circuit City I think I was like right at 21 about that point. So that would have been, I mean, goodness, probably what, 82, 23, 2003. I went to work for Circuit City selling electronics, specifically home audio stuff. So speakers, subwoofers, home theater packages, stuff like that. And worked there for about a good solid year. While I was working there though, I was also working at MBNA, the credit card company, or the bank, that provided what was at the time a new idea called affinity credit cards. And so you'd have a Georgia Bulldog logo, and you know, the annual fee would go back to the Alumni Association, or you'd have your Zoo Atlanta credit card and they would get a donation, you know, from your annual fee that you paid every year to that credit card. So anyway, the long story short though, that I was working 2 different jobs, and that's when I really started working 2 different jobs. I left working MBNA and went to sell the Atlanta Journal-Constitution door to door. Did that for about 18 months or so. And that was a full-time gig. So I'd go work Circuit City in the morning, and then that in the afternoon and evening when people were getting home from work. I would knock on your door, give my little pitch, my little spiel on why you should buy, pretty much at that point, and I still, to this day maybe, in fact they may have been canceled, but what was the only newspaper in Atlanta. So did that for a little while, and then after leaving Circuit City, I went to work for Best Buy, and that was my kind of full-time gig at that point. And wasn't really working any other job at that point. There were a lot of instances though, and I think this is really another important point to take away, that like, you've got, when you're that age and when you've got that kind of energy, you've got time on your side. So people that work 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day in a part-time job, you're working 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 hours 2 or 3 days a week, you've got a lot more time that you can go out and make money and produce income. And again, to my earlier point, DoorDash, Uber, like whatever you can afford to do, you've just got more options than I ever had. I would have had 4 jobs back then because I would have been doing stuff in between. I mean, my friends used to make fun of me because I was just always working, but it was a double-edged sword for me. Number one, if I was working, I couldn't be doing other things, generally spending that money. But number two, it kept me out of trouble. After leaving Best Buy though, that is really when I kicked it into gear. And again, this is like a 2-year gap in between what I thought like when I needed to go get a real job. 2 years later, I actually went and got that real job. I started working for a small engineering company here in Atlanta that did asbestos and lead and mold removal. We did huge projects down at Georgia Tech, Georgia State University downtown. I mean, AT&T, anywhere and everywhere there was older buildings, and older I mean like 70s, 60s, 40s even, Grady Hospital. I mean, just anywhere and everywhere you could go and work. And for a lot of these guys, they were renovating spaces, so they were tearing down old walls and putting up new ones. They were putting in HVAC system. I mean, just a plethora of stuff. So anyway, did that for 2 years. And I mean, you won't believe this, and unless you follow me on Instagram at Matt_LaMarsh, by the way, you will have already heard this, but no lie, and I have the paychecks to prove it, 65, 70, 75, 80 hours a week. A week. There are paychecks that have 40 regular hours and then 35 overtime hours, 42 hours of overtime. I mean, I can't make the, in fact, I'll insert a couple pictures here of those paychecks just so you believe me. But anyway, 2 years there doing that, and I learned a lot about small business. There were 14 employees there. I was one of 14. My cousin Josh worked there as well with me at the same time. Great learning experience. And that was like having 2 jobs, because I would work Friday night from 7 p.m. to Saturday morning at 7 a.m. And then I would go back on Saturday night at 7 p.m. and work till Sunday morning, 7 a.m. And then I would go back on Sunday night at 7 p.m. and work till Monday at 7 a.m. So you're talking about 36 hours right there at the very end of my paycheck, period. So anyway, just got to this first house though, this first showing. We're gonna go take a look inside real quick here, and then we'll pick up after engineering firm in between here and the next house. After I left the engineering firm, I went to go work for another small business, an eBay business called I Sold It on eBay. And that company was 3 different locations. It was 3 owners. One was basically silent, and then a husband-wife that partnered up with this third partner to open these 3 stores. So there was one in Marietta, one in Roswell, and then another one over in Johns Creek, kind of Duluth area. So I started off at the Roswell location and basically managed that store, managed the day-to-day operations there. So people would bring stuff in, we would list it on eBay, we would turn around and sell it in a 7-day auction, and then we would take a commission of that, and then we would ship it out. And you know, there were people that brought us 1 item, there were people that brought us 1,000 items over the course of weeks and weeks and weeks, and so we just kept it going. And it was great because I had a girl there that could list stuff like mad, and not only could she like work well and list the stuff, but she could also research stuff, so find out the right categories. There's a lot that goes into making a ton of money on eBay, and I'll probably do another video on that at some point. But anyway, started out in that store. Eventually they went from 3 stores down to 2 stores, and then from 2 stores down to 1. That business was just crazy good at the time, and this is like probably mid-2000s, so a little bit different market than we're in now, obviously. And we were getting ready to go into like the 07-08 crash, if you will. But just a really, really interesting business and really interesting time. And what it taught me was that I needed to go start my own business doing that, because there was nothing proprietary about that business. And so once the partners decided to dissolve that partnership, I actually did. I went out on my own and started my own business doing that while I was working for a blueprint shop. And so I was managing a blueprint shop location. Builders, architects and stuff would bring in their blueprints or would email us files, and then we would print them out so they could have them on job sites or in the house boxes that were being built, stuff like that. So I did those 2 at the same time because the blueprint shop was brand new, had 0 customers when we opened it, and we grew that into a very profitable business. But at the same time, and the in-between times, I was selling stuff for people on eBay myself. And so that was like my first LLC. That was my first real business that I started by myself, outside of like some lawn care and stuff that I did when I was, you know, 14, 15 years old with my brother. But anyway, started my own business there. About 2 years of that, and it just failed miserably. The market shifted, the market changed, and then all of our customers just vaporized. And I used to do business for individuals. I used to do small businesses would bring me stuff for the business to sell, and then I would cut them a check back on, you know, minus commissions and everything. But the real lesson there for me was my first business failed pretty epically, and in a really short amount of time. I mean, it just gone. So anyway, but it was a good learning lesson, and what I took away from that was this is good learning, this is good experience, but we need to take that into the next thing. So after I left there, I went to work for Lucas Group, which is an executive recruiting firm here in Atlanta, down in Buckhead. I worked in the military division, so there were guys, girls getting out of specifically the Navy and the Air Force. We did every once in a while work with Army and Marine Corps guys and girls that were super technical, had electrical, electronic, mechanical experience in the armed services, which, by the way, we just owe you guys forever and always. I mean, to hear some of the stories and stuff that those guys and girls went through was just unbelievable. But anyway, so if you've served, thank you so much for your service. We really do just owe you a huge debt of gratitude. So anyway, but guys and girls transitioning out of the military, whether it was after 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, or a full career of 20 years, we would help them transition into civilian life and to get a position in the electrical, electronics, or mechanical fields, working for Samsung and Sony, and I mean, just huge organizations, and then small businesses as well. So But that was a really good experience. Good kind of cutting my teeth on sales in the real world, so to speak, in corporate America.